And it finally came out of my mouth. I said, I'm an indigenous member of the human tribe, of the universal nation. And then they asked me if I was a healer. And I finally said, yes, but I have one primary client. That's me. And my philosophy is, as I resonate a different energy, I affect people.
Hello and welcome to the Intentional Clinician Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Krauss, licensed professional counselor. Today's episode is part 2 of my conversation with David Fraijo. We're calling this one Intuition, Trauma, and the Many Paths to Becoming a Healer. In part 2 of our conversation, we are going to discuss how to listen to your own intuition, how to deal with codependence, difficult family systems, and recovery from trauma. This is not an episode you are going to want to miss. If you enjoyed the first conversation with David Fraijo, you may enjoy this one even more. As a famous writer, Charles Bukowski, once said, "The free soul is rare, but you know it when you see it." Basically, you feel good, very good, when you are near or with them. And that is something that has resonated with me after I met with David. It's just that his presence and his focus on self-healing is so powerful that without him trying to do anything, you just feel better in his presence. You feel uplifted and I think inspired. And so there is no doubt in my mind as to why so many places have had David speak at their recovery groups and why he's written his book. And people really like the book, and he's making rattles, which you'll hear about in this episode, and why lately he's been working on the concept of actually becoming a healing coach. And before we get to the interview, if you are enjoying this podcast, please share it with people you know. I would surely appreciate it. And or leave us a rating on iTunes. Thanks so much for listening, and now for the interview. And why do I need to be in this hustle and bustle? People are reevaluating their values.
Well, not only reevaluating, they're redefining.
Yeah.
What is wealth? So in the whole concept of me recognizing I have to redefine everything I thought I knew, so I had to redefine what is a man? What is a relationship? What is love? Because what I talked about in my first marriage, I thought I was in love, but if you really study it, it was overt toxic codependency. But I called it love, and it was difficult to let that go. But when I got to the point where I did let it go, that was the worst thing that could have happened to me. It wasn't. There was this dark shadow. This house is not the same as it is now as it was when I was married. I didn't know it because I was, working and, it was cold. And there was tension in here all the time. And it's not like that now.
It feels really nice in here.
This is a home of healing.
Yeah.
And so in self-identification, people would come up to me. I'm Hispanic, but if I'm in Hawaii, I look Polynesian. If I walk around here, I look Native, whatever the fuck that looks like. And people would say, well, what tribe are you from? Like there's supposed to be some big glorious element to be Native American. And I would hesitate answering them. And then they would ask, are you a healer? And I would hesitate that because 95% of the people who are asking you that want you to fix them. And I'm not into fixing anybody. I wouldn't even be a sponsor in 12-step,
Yeah.
So I finally had enough testicular fortitude. Some young girls came up to us. Susan and I were visiting the stupa, the Buddhist stupa up in Sedona.
Yeah.
And now they have a medicine wheel behind there.
Oh.
So anyways, we were there and some girls walked up and they asked, what tribe you're from. And it finally came out of my mouth. I said, I'm an indigenous member of the human tribe, of the universal nation. And then they asked me if I was a healer. And I finally said, yes, but I have one primary client. That's me. And my philosophy is, as I resonate a different energy, I affect people. I did that anyways, but it was toxic. It was based in trauma. And the way that I affect people isn't always the way I would like it to. Because I scare the shit out of a lot of people just being David.
Well, I was about to say, you're not in control of their responses.
I didn't know that.
Right.
I was responsible for everybody's responses.
Oh, yeah.
See, I've just recently learned that most of us that come out of trauma, most of us, period, but young kids that come out of trauma are intuitive. You know, I could go into a bar, I could go into a party, and I could go look at that guy over there. And I knew that at some point that night we were going to be into it. You know, that's intuitiveness. But the problem with that is I heard Abraham Hicks talk about this, and it just resonated with me. Because I've heard people say, well, I'm an intuitive, I'm a healer, and it just really bugged the shit out of me. And then I realized that to be intuitive is not a gift. It's a responsibility. Mm. And it's a responsibility of self not to take on everybody's shit. And I said this before I even knew what intuitive meant. You know, I took on everybody's shit in my family and made it mine. Mm. I was the scapegoat, you know, in John Brashaw's...
The whole alcoholic family system
that
he
or
came
whatever,
up with.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm not in that situation now. When I was talking at Sunburst, I said, you know, I want to blame them, but there is no more them. I don't live at home anymore. You know, I grew up with having food, and you know, we weren't wealthy as far as a lot of money, but we always had food, we always had cars, we always had clothes. But I felt poor because of the way that my parents went through the Depression, how that affected them. You know, my mom had, can't remember how many rolls of toilet paper, you know, because they didn't have toilet paper when they were growing up, you know, and poor food is now exotic, you know, eating red chili cactus and eating chicken wings and beef insides and all that kind of stuff was poor food. Mm. You know, now it's exotic, you know,
right.
But, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And so my intuitiveness, my partner wanted to have a reading in Sedona, so we were up there in Thanksgiving. And so I sat in with this lady, and she did my reading. And all this stuff about shaman this and shaman that and this, that, and the other. And I just listened to her. I didn't want to do anything but listen to her. And one of my nieces came up to me that has very little contact with me, walked up to me and asked me about that, which was a little pissy because she doesn't talk to me about shit anyways, you know. But she asked me about this shaman thing. And I told her, it's not a glorification for me. It's a responsibility. And my responsibility is to be the healer of self and affect other people. And she walked away.
Well, you know, okay, so I have to comment on that. So if somebody advertises and tells everybody, I'm a shaman, I'm a healer, and that's their approach, mm-hmm. I'm a little bit worried about that.
That makes 100% of the people in this room.
Right. So it's the same as one of my biggest pet peeves, having grown up in organized religion, although it was very disorganized, thank goodness. That my parents went to so many different churches, which was actually very useful for me growing up to learn about how everyone thought they had the right answer. Yeah. Anyone who tells me they've got the right answer that isn't a mathematician, I don't trust.
Yep.
I trust math people to tell me the square footage of a house.
Right.
But I don't trust you if you say you got the answer, because there are many answers.
Absolutely.
And so when somebody says to you, David, are you a healer? That's because they sense something. Mm-hmm. So there I feel like you have permission to say yes or say something funny. But that's just it. If you and I went to some... Well, we're not going to go to the bar. So let's just say we went to Sedona, where there's lots of quote-unquote healers, and we went and hung out, you know, one of these places. I think that if you and I went around and tried to meet people in one of these conventions or whatever, the most healing people are the most quiet. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's hard for me to swallow because I'm a therapist. So, but I don't think I'm a healer either. I think, what is a therapist? I always say a therapist is a guide who knows some techniques and tries to kill their ego and get it out of your way, because you have to heal yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm only giving you ideas, techniques, suggestions, and I'm taking you through different exercises, or I'm taking you through different rituals, mm-hmm. and then you do it. because every time I used to joke about this. Every time I think I know a case, meaning a person, and the way by case I mean the way that they see the world or what they're going through. Every time I think, all of a sudden I arrive at an answer is the moment they prove me wrong. Mm-hmm. So what Randy used to say, this is all back in 2008. Randy used to say his favorite student was a lady from Japan who came here to live and for a while, and she spoke English and Japanese, and she wanted to become a therapist, and there was all these eager beaver therapists who were like, oh yeah, I do this and I do that and then I do this, and she goes, you know what I do? I've learned this, and maybe you'll laugh at this, but I asked the person, how can I help you heal? What things should I work on so that when I come back next week to our therapy session that I can best serve you?
Right.
The opposite. So she'd take notes, and they'd say, well, maybe they say, I'm from an alcoholic family. Can you learn about that? Because I don't know about that. I want to know more about how do you help me? Or I get angry. I need to know about that, but can you tell me how to do that? Mm-hmm. Versus what a lot of therapists would say is, well, I see on your intake form that you've got an anger problem, so I need you to read this book by blah 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 blah. And I'm this expert, and then whose ego is that feeding?
Right.
And so I always tell people, when I have clients, I don't want to tell them about my story so much because that can get in the way of healing, because they do need to project onto you a little bit. Mm-hmm. But people say, well, have you ever faced this? I say yes. Mm-hmm. But that's why I go to my own therapist. Mm-hmm. That's why I have my own healers in my life, right. Because I don't want you to have to know about that. But I'll tell you this: yes, mm-hmm. The answer is yes. Yeah. So, boy, the ego. It's gotten me in a lot of trouble, and I talk a lot too. And
well, there's an aspect about ego that I didn't know about.
What's that?
See, I always assumed, just like forgiveness was warm and fuzzy, and resolution was warm and fuzzy. I always thought that ego was about being grandiose. It's not. People that play small, that's ego too.
Oh, that's ego. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So my mom, who I thought was a victim of my dad, she had all the power. Mm-hmm. And when earlier in their days, before I was born, and maybe shortly after a little bit, I did not know that my dad beat my mom. When I was growing up, he would say, beat me, and she'd beat the shit out of him. They had horrible fights, and they'd last for months and months and months. No. And my mom was didn't know at the time, was controlled by silence. She just kept it quiet. So meditation and prayer, quiet is deafening for me. Now I'm better with it now, but when I worked by myself, I had a radio next to me. If it was at my mom and dad's house when I was a kid, I had the radio in the bathroom turned on, the stereo in the bedroom, and the television on. I needed some sound stimulus, because if it was silent, something really bad was going to happen after the silence.
Oh no!
And I didn't know that.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. I've been doing trauma-informed therapy since somewhere about 10 years ago, and I had to deal with my own traumas, which are always, everyone's traumas are different. Mm-hmm. Mine were less stereotypical than, they're definitely codependence and definitely some stuff I won't get into, but there's some stereotype trauma with mine, but it wasn't the typical one you think of with ACEs as much. But I found that people that had grown up in a chaotic household, a lot of therapists don't understand this, but they were like, oh, I know. I just went to a mindfulness training. Here's what you should do. Let's just sit here in silence and have you put your hands on your lap and just breathe for like 20 minutes. And the person's like freaking out. They're having like flashbacks. They're having like visions. They're hearing negative voices in their mind. And the therapist's like, I can't believe it. They can't even meditate. I said, listen, you
dumbass,
ignorant moron. First of all, you went through a workshop, so you learned to meditate. But second of all, you've overcome a lot of your mental health challenges to get here.
Right.
I said, they're in the middle. They're in the thick of it. You think silence is going to solve someone's problem when their nervous system is resonating? You got to meet them where they're at. So if their nervous system is resonating at that high level, you got to meet that high level before they're going to come down. Like cures like, right? And I said, yeah, you know what? There are certain people that benefit from meditation who perhaps, have looping thoughts and, low-lying depression. But the people that are coming out of a traumatic household, it's going to take them a hell of a lot of time to even ever get close to meditating. So I said, here's the trade-off and this isn't a cure-all, but if the meditation makes them worse, don't do meditation. Do guided talking, where they write down words. Maybe they listen to it back on a tape recorder, or you talk and they listen, and that helps them direct. Now, that doesn't dominate their thoughts, but it gives them something to hold on to.
Yeah.
To be able to reflect off of. Yeah. Anyway, there's way more technique to it. But
people hearing this can't see what I'm going to do right now.
Oh,
but
okay.
Somebody at the spiritual center I was at, I thought I was broke, so I was afraid to spend money, and they gifted me a class for meditation. So I sat there, and I've always got one eye open to see what everybody else is doing. And for a moment there, I hit that mark, and what happened was I threw my arms up in front of my face like that.
Wow.
So my first affirmation was duck. So I talk. You're a talker, I'm a talker, Randy's a talker, guys in the group are talkers. So I talk process through that way. Can I become quiet? Yeah. When I'm scraping the bark off with a stick to make a rattle, if I'm trying to figure out how to configure it so it fits on the stick, because basically it defies the laws of physics. It shouldn't be stuck to that stick,
Right.
That's and I don't get warm and fuzzy meditation, it's just I like working in my yard. I like creating things. I like fixing things, and the problem is I can't fix anybody. But I can fix a hose.
There you go.
I can fill a crack in a deck. I can do stuff like that. But there is a percentage of us that just can't traditionally meditate, and that's what I really like. I don't read well, so I don't read a lot, but I listen a lot. And when I heard what was it? This guy, he just died. Vietnamese Buddhist.
Oh. Yeah, I know. Thich Nhat Hanh.
Right. When he said anything can be meditation, washing a plate, cleaning the floor, washing the car, anything can be meditative. It puts what's the energy you're putting into the thoughts that you're having while you're doing that. Wow. That fits me, So that's, and there's another aspect about, I think you fit into this situation, or we wouldn't be having this lengthy conversation. None of us fit in. And so I do things that are different than what is supposed to be the norm. We never fit in until we found a space where we could fit in, and that happened to be in recovery with a bunch of guys in here that were open to experiencing emotion and new thought and changing our identity from who we thought we were to whoever the hell I'm going to be. I be what I be right now, but that doesn't mean I'll be that way next week. If I can start bringing supplemental income with Rattles and do some stuff with Randy and Adam as a coach and that type of stuff, that's what I'm going to do. And I don't have to be a cool deck guy. I took a lot of pride in that. My dad was one of the first installers of the system here in Arizona called Cool Deck. I started remodel and restoration, which was separate from him. And I started my own company because I was fired from my dad's company. And I'm a talker, and I'm not a good liar. So I'd be honest with people and tell them, what it is and what I could do. And I think I would tell them, look, it's really important that you realize what I think I'm capable of doing, but I think it's equally as important for you to realize what I can't or I won't. Because I don't defy the laws of physics. I can't make water go a direction you want it to go if it's not going to work that way. So, I'm redefining what wealth is. Do I have a whole lot of money? Compared to a lot of people, I do. Compared to others, I don't have very much. But I'm wealthy. I'm wealthy because I'm beginning to learn how to like myself. And some things are just too damn big for me. And so people would say, oh, well, you just need to learn how to love yourself. Well, fuck you. So I brought it down and said, look, maybe, possibly, I might conceive liking myself, and I'll build from there, okay? And it's worked. It's working. I can sit here right now with a lot of confidence and say, I like me. And that's only happened out of 68 years on this planet in the last 3 years to get close enough to say that without crying. Or learning self-identification. When I went to this spiritual center, and it was kind of based on physics and science a little bit and stuff. And two things came up for me. Cause and effect, and that light could be measured both as a particle and a wave. And at that point, I realized everything, even if it's matter, is energy. Mm. And so then I started to recognize, what are my thoughts focused on that create the energy that no longer matters? So I don't talk politics with fucking anybody, and I don't talk about crap. I just met a really, really good friend of mine. He's part of the Healing Circle now, and he was part of a bike group that was a friend of one of Susan's friends. And they were going to the bar up here, restaurant, and have a beer and get food. And she says, "You got to come meet Steve." What the hell am I going to do sitting at a goddamn bar? Mm-hmm. So I go there, and we were friends with who was our waiter, and now he was the bartender. And Steve, they were talking their crap about people and traffic and complaining about work and men and all kinds of crap. And at some point, Steve looked at me and he says, "David, you look like you're kind of a patient guy, And I looked at Susan and I looked back at him, and he says, "Do you want to share anything?" Nope. No, because I don't want to engage in those conversations. Right. I want to start to utilize my energy efficiently, because it's all about energy to me now. So talking about crap that doesn't matter, worrying about what's going to happen in the future, recalibrating everything that happened to you in the past is all the fucking waste of energy. I mean, it was useful and beneficial, and if I have to do it, I'll do it in order to get to the other side of it, and I'll experience the emotions that'll go with that. I'm open to that, So to be happy is not interesting to me. What's interesting to me is if I can live my life in peace and calm. And if happy comes, cool. And if the contrast comes, okay. It's not cool, but it's okay. I had a friend of mine who helped me. I was going to lose this house about 6 years ago, and she helped me get a modification, and it was terrible. They were just taking houses left and right. And Wow. She quit doing it, but she sensed me. And I can share with you another story about our relationship. And she at one point, and then she helped me with the reverse on this thing. But at some point she said, I was bitching, crying about some bullshit about what was going on. She goes, well, I look forward to those times because I know there's a big lesson on the other side of it. And I said, well, I'm not even fucking close to that, okay? But in some levels I am. And I enjoy talking to people, and I'm in that intuitiveness. I can tell who I can't and won't. Most of them won't even make eye contact with you. But people that if I tip my head and they ask me how I'm doing, I come up with a little smart ass remarks and, oh my God, that's really funny, Mm-hmm. Or we went to California, went to this place called Muir Woods, mm-hmm. and we were walking out, and there was a lady in a wheelchair, and she was touching a log, and there was a bunch of people. I want to say older people, but they were probably my age.
Right.
And I just walked up to her, and she had her hand on the log, and like I said, she was on a wheelchair, and a bunch of her people were standing around her. And I just walked up. I said, there's a 12-step program for that. It's called Tree Huggers Anonymous. And she did that, luckily. And she just, I all cracked up, And I just, okay, I made it. I'm out of here.
Right.
And I could hear her tell that's a message from Steve, her brother.
Oh, wow.
So apparently her brother was a woodsy guy or whatever he was.
Right.
And that connection. And that's just cool.
Yeah.
I don't like giving people money.
Right.
You know, that are begging for it or whatever. But I like helping them when I can, you know. And they've taught me things. You know, I used to get water in jugs from one of these water and ice places, and they're glass bottles. I don't know what the hell I was thinking.
Right.
So I got 5 bottles of these big gallon containers, and as I'm walking into the place, some guy walks up, and I'm thinking to myself, son of a bitch, this guy's going to ask me for money or something like that. And he rushes over there, and he opens the door for me.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, I didn't run with it, you know. This guy had a different thing in his head to be helpful and kind. But I interpreted him because of the way he looked or whatever that he was going to hit me up. So I'm open. I'm more open. You know, I don't judge people quite as much as I used to about where they're at. And the weird thing about that is that people that look the best, I'm the most afraid of.
Probably for good reason.
Yeah. And so there's another aspect about that. Randy sat in this room here years ago, and said, you know, the world is going to be in need of healers soon. And if we wait for everybody to get paper, we'll be fucked. He didn't say that. That's my part.
No, he said, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And so I believe I'm a healer, but I'm my first client, and I affect people with that in the way that I share things. And Randy and all these clinicians would take 15 minutes to say something, and so I'd say, so bottom line, you're saying this guy's fucked up. Oh, yeah, okay. That's efficient, you know? So I have a way of communicating with a certain percentage of people, and I enjoy that.
Yeah.
And the people that I don't, I'm okay. And they're related to me.
There you go.
You know? When I first got sober, I called my hero, my middle brother, and I told him, man, I can't believe all the shit that I'm learning here, you know? And I think I know what I need to do. I need to grow up. I need to grow up emotionally. I need to grow up mentally. And that's been my path. And then I had a brother-in-law say to me, hey, man, how come you're not coming to the family gatherings, you know? Or, you know, he invited me to Sedona when they were partying up there. And I told him, man, I don't want to be around that. I'm avoiding the family right now. And he said, well, you know, I hope you don't think because you stopped drinking, the rest of us are going to stop. And I said, you know what, man, I could give a shit what you guys do. And that was a fucking lie.
Right.
Because that system was my first substance.
Right.
And I lived my whole life living off of that substance that was sick.
Yeah.
And to make that transformation to where I'm at right now, holy shit. Because I'm not supposed to be here. I was the one that got himself wrapped around a telephone pole, got beat up killed in a bar fight, or killed myself. And had I done that, I'd have taken all the fucking family secrets down with me. And I've watched family members do that. I'm still here. And I'm doing something. With this first, I'm pointing to myself. I'm pointing to my heart, actually.
Right.
And that resonation of that change is affecting people. And sometimes it scares the shit out of them.
But I think that's the powerful part of it.
Yes.
Is that, well, Randy's talking to me. He also said something similar last night because we were talking about the bullshit about licensure and this and that, and both the positive and negative of the rises of the coach. Mm-hmm. And my problem with a lot of the coaches is that all they want to do is help others.
Right.
And that's cool. But if you haven't done your own work, you're only going to take them so far as you've gone.
Yeah.
And so when you say, I work on myself first, and if that helps other people, then great. That's the whole point.
Yes.
Because that's a real coach. That's a real mentor, is the mentor and the coach do their own work, and then they just tell you about it. They talk to you, and they relate and all of that. They're not your therapist. But a coach and a mentor and a peer can be more effective than a therapist, because you can let your guard down around them. But the issue is, if I go pay some coach I meet online that says they're going to help me get organized or whatever, well, that sounds nice, right? But they're just telling me how to get organized, and I could just read a book on how to get organized, right? What I want from them is their enthusiasm. I want their energy. I want their, you can do it. I want a cheerleader.
Yeah.
But if I need a coach to help me with my soul, I need somebody who's done soul work. I can't get somebody who goes, you can do it. Yeah. Come on. work on your soul. What about your soul? Well, I'm just a coach. This is my so I think I'm excited. I really hope I can talk you into. We'll see, but maybe talk you into some more places carrying your rattles, or perhaps even we'll see. This is on air, so you could say no, but thinking about if you had a way that people could order custom ones for different things they're doing.
Well, Adam just talked to me yesterday. Susan might be doing some website stuff with them, and maybe be a receptionist. And so she brought the phone over here, and Adam said, "I hadn't thought about this. I have a really nice. That's this guy's artwork, man.
Yeah,
this guy's phenomenal.
He's great. What's his name?
Rod Bearcloud.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and anyways, I'm in what I consider one of the fanciest art galleries up there, and my rattles are up there.
Yeah.
So, and I told him he bought eight of them from me the other day. Oops. So so Adam came out and said, "Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't on the web page for Sound Healing Arts, display your rattles, market the book." And because he wants me to do some coaching and some classes. I've done that before. I did it for years. Randy got me involved in doing that for the different health agencies. I said, dude, I'm open to everything right now. I'm open to everything. So if you have something to offer, I'm open. There's some special medicine on these rattles, and it's like my daughter's cards.
Yeah.
Everybody that knew Amy, if she met you, she'd get your address, she'd talk to you, and she'd start sending you cards and letters, or make phone calls and stuff. And when I did her celebration of life thing, her DNA is on those cards.
Yeah.
It's not an email, it's not a text. She made those cards and she sent them out. Well, my DNA is in those rattles.
Yeah.
Do with that what you may. So there was a lady at the spiritual center I was at. She said her son has turned 13. She wanted to get him a rattle, and she wanted me to tell a story about the rattles. So I go over there, and Randy was there, and some other guy was there, and this 13-year-old kid. So I start to get in the story of whatever I think the rattle, and he didn't give a shit. He's 13 years old, and I said, here's what's neat, man. It really looks cool on your wall. There we go. That's the message for the rattle.
But that's the cool thing, is they can evolve beyond a piece of art to also useful.
Yeah.
Because the rattle, I don't know much about rattles, but my intuition tells me that when you shake it, you hear something, and it can reflect something back to you. And like you said, vibrations. Mm-hmm. There's new research, although it's been happening for thousands of years, of sound healing. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that because sound, like you said, particles are the sound is a wave, I think, that goes through you and penetrates your body. And so like the healing bowls in the Tibetan Buddhism, or the sound bowls where they make the noise helps you focus or feel different. Yeah. So I think the rattle is a tool. I don't know everything about the origins and why, but
you know what? Neither do I.
Okay.
I when I was married, my wife and I went to go see a movie called Little Big Man.
Okay.
And I just was fucking pissed at what the government was doing. Then I watched a movie called Thunderheart with Val Kilmer and Kelsey Grammer, not Graham, whatever, the guy from Dances with Wolves. And I saw the rattle, and some FBI guy, just 500-year-old medicine rattle, and the FBI guy just throws it on him and stomps on it. So I just started making rattles. And I went and looked at some of them, and they were pretty crafty looking and stuff. And so I just started playing with these, and everyone's unique, everyone's different. I never know how they're going to turn out. Some of them have been sitting for years with just the gourd or the turtle shell sitting on the stick, and then all of a sudden I'll get enthused and decor them, And for Bearcloud, who I consider, we've done Sweat Lodge with him a couple of times with Susan. He's a spiritual guy, I guess. He does medicine work and all that kind of stuff. He did ceremony for both Susan and I. When Amy died, we didn't realize till later that Susan's sister died right around the same time. I just didn't find her right away and stuff. But he did ceremony with us. And he's very Dene. He's very Navajo. He doesn't say a lot of shit, you know. And when he talks, he kind of mumbles a little bit, you know. But he called me one time. And he says, hey, you know, and he doesn't call people. He called me up and says, hey, I've always considered your rattles spiritual, and I'd like for you to get some. Now, about 5 years ago. So this last trip, I took 10 of them up there. Yeah. And I finished most of them within the 2-week period.
What if I play one for the audience?
No. Try the one that's on the other side, that one over there.
Okay. So, and what do you make these out of?
I have an affection for mesquite.
Okay.
But I can make them out of different types of wood, usually gourd or turtle shell. That's it.
Oh, wow. So this has got the gourd. It's got bells on it.
Right.
Feathers. And looks like leather straps and beads.
Yeah.
And then you make the wood, you carve.
I don't carve the wood. I just expose what was there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I think I put that on the right.
That's fine. Actually, Adam asked me to be in his wedding.
Oh, okay.
And I did a chant with the rattles.
Really?
And sang a song.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I think the listeners are really going to identify with a few things. First of all, your book, which is easily accessible, which I'll have the link for in the notes. And I think the listeners also will be intrigued about the rattles. And I know we'll have some links for that, you know, as well. And I'm thinking about the classes and the coaching work that you're going to be doing. And I believe that what's Adam's collective called? His healing collective?
His practice was called?
Yeah.
I think it's called Sound Healing Arts.
Sound Healing Arts, right, because he does a lot of sound healing. He's a therapist here in Arizona. So I think I'm going to make sure that website is up as well.
Cool.
For people. And... you know, I was thinking about this. Does Adam's page have a contact form so people could ask you about stuff?
They probably will. Everything's like in formulation.
Into construction, right? Yeah. 'Cause I was thinking about that because I love that you can do the local things, but I think once in a while you'll find a person who listens to this from some other country or state that might say, David, I have a project or an idea, and they might send you a message. So are you open to that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I can see, I didn't know you sang a song and did this thing at Adam's wedding. I just thought about, not that you're doing gigs, but I could just see somebody being really interested to get that.
The lady that helped me with the house has done a lot of healing work, with whatever. And she said there's probably a market for that, to open weddings.
Oh, yeah.
With that process. But I wasn't ready for it, man. This thing with my daughter.
Yeah.
I was getting so stressed out by it. I actually went into Susan's office and just lost it and said, I can't do this anymore. I might have to find her a fiduciary or something. I can't do this no more. I don't know how to do this. She died the next day.
Oh, my.
And when I was telling a friend of mine that I met at the treatment center where I used to speak, I spoke out there for 8 years the last Thursday of every month. It's about the only religious thing I've ever done in my life.
Right.
And it wasn't what he said, it's how I reacted, because I was complaining about her behavior and all that stuff and the Parkinson's and stuff, and not knowing it was a Parkinson's. And he said, well, maybe she doesn't want to live the next 20 years with Parkinson's.
Oh, man.
And I thought to myself, and it wasn't what he said. I didn't defend it. I didn't try to explain it. Something resonated there. And maybe that was the reason on the drive over there I decided I'm going to listen to her. And I did. So.
Yeah.
And I'm beginning to learn how to listen better. And I'm focused on my own healing, which I've always have. I just didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was just being an asshole.
Right.
People say, "You want to be my sponsor?" Nope.
Right.
So Greg, when I'm at this treatment center, come up to me and said, will you be my... this is how he said it. My counselor says I need to get a sponsor. Okay. Will you be my sponsor? I said, no. Here's my phone number. You call, and maybe we'll be friends. And we've been friends for almost 30 years.
Wow.
And he says things in a blunt way, and sometimes I hear him, And he's working with Native Americans. He does respite care for them.
Oh, wow.
And so he wants me to talk to families and stuff. And I'm not sure about teaching people how to make rattles. I don't know about that, but they could be medicine. I did work on Susan one time. She kind of got out of her body for a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah. Intention overrides technique.
Yeah. Well, I think, one of the things I'm taking away, there's a lot that I will take away, is about going through the dark tunnel, going through things, but then finding a purpose of living in a way that is realistic to your surroundings. And I mean realistic, I mean authentic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Authentic to your surroundings. And how much do we actually impact people that we don't even know?
Right.
So if we're in a shit mood, acting like an asshole, running around town, being ungrateful and focused on some delusion, that energy rubs off. Or we can walk around the city, people we know, people we're related to, people we're not related to, try to give them dignity and respect. And some of them are friends, some we don't know. Yeah. And what does that do to the community, right?
I think the second alternative is a lot better.
Yeah.
And it's a more efficient way for me to utilize my energy. And my intention isn't to fix anybody. Somebody told me if it hadn't been for you, I'd have committed suicide. And I said, I didn't save you. You just didn't die. If I want to take any credit, I helped you change the quality of your life.
Yeah.
Not your life. Because I can't make anybody not kill themselves. But I might be able to instill... When I talk to people who have been suicidal and say that my doing that would have been murdering the wrong identity, they just like, holy shit, what is my identity that I want to murder that might not be who I really am? That's what happened to me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's a really good takeaway. And another thing, I don't know if you said this or I'm just thinking about this, is that your identity is malleable and changeable.
Yes.
But it takes work.
Absolutely.
And if you don't like who you are, it's going to be real tough to change. But if you do, if you work towards a different you, even if it's not idealized, the idealized you that you want, you're going to feel more contentment and gratitude for life, I think, than if you don't like who you are.
Well, not liking who we are, it takes a tremendous amount of energy.
Right.
I mean, the thought process, the emotional experience, the behavior that supports all that, that's exhausting, But to live in peace and calm and to be okay with who I am is a lot more efficient energy. Like I said, I don't give a shit about being happy. I'm probably happier than I've ever been in my life in the last couple of years. And my recovery really didn't start till I got together with Susan. I got divorced.
Yeah.
And lots of shit came up about that.
Right.
A lot of resolution needed, and still does. I'm still working on it, But, no, I think here's the part that I'm not religious, okay? The church I came from was the NFL and the National Baseball League.
I think that's more common than people realize in this country.
But that God is the creator Well, we're all creators. I have buried, and we're all successful. I have buried a lot of people who successfully died of dis-ease. Mm-hmm. And they did it to perfection. So I'm a creator, but I'm also a co-creator. And we right now, we're co-creating something. And I don't even want to identify it because I might fuck it up by trying to describe it. But there's an energy here between you and me, which is now being permeated, going to be permeating everywhere, of a connection of co-creation. I didn't know I was going to do this, man. I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a plan. You know, I didn't want to get divorced. You know? And then I got divorced. And I thought I would talk to my sister every week. Well, 6 weeks they're going to leave. And every week I'd say I'd be in this other room here in the darkest corner, the room behind here, in the darkest corner, in the fetal position. And everybody left. And that didn't happen. And then within a few weeks or months, the guy bought my house, his parents' house, and he ended up moving next door. Some of my best drug and alcohol stories are with him. He's dead.
Yeah.
And I get together with Susan. And it's been difficult, but I've probably my real recovery really started then. Because all the people that were still here were part of the dysfunction that I created. And not everybody was in line with what I was doing because I didn't even know what the fuck I was doing.
That's a good point.
This is as much of an accident as it is a choice, you know?
Right.
And I'm okay with that. But I'm a co-creator. Yeah. And you and I are co-creating right now. And we're co-creating something different than sitting around with a bunch of fucking beer and whiskey and around a keg of beer, you know? Right. Bullshitting about shit that doesn't matter. Complaining about crap I can't do nothing about.
That's the big piece.
You know,
right.
When this guy who's ex now, I said, I don't know if he's going to be a good president or a bad president because I don't know what that means. But my sense is, and this is before everything happened, I says, I have a feeling this guy's going to bring up shit we're going to have to deal with. And the other thing is, I believe, and I can't say this to everybody, I think this guy's profoundly mentally ill.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the only things I said, you know. And to me, he brought up systemic racism. To me, he brought up the dysfunction and the disease of machismo. Yeah. You know, to me, how prolific somebody can gain by making a bunch of money being a lying sack of shit.
Yeah.
You know, wow. And then claim he's successful, you know?
Well, yeah, and for me it was, you can say anything and do anything you want, but if you pledge allegiance to certain people's interest groups, they don't care about your morality, your track record, your honesty. It's all about the bottom line. Yep. And so what is that but the embodiment of our worst shadow? Mm-hmm. And it actually, to me, people said, oh, what a problem this person is. I said, he's not the problem.
No.
I said, he's a symptom. I said, he's actually the perfect archetype of what is in the soul mm-hmm. of a large portion of our country, and we deserve it. Yeah. And I don't like it, but I think we're in the middle of a disruption culturally that started with the internet.
Well,
and maybe even before then.
Okay, I'm a product of the 60s.
Sure.
Okay, I mean, they were blowing up buildings and rioting and
right.
All kinds of. Then the race shit, and Martin Luther King got shot in 1969, I think it was, or 68. Mm-hmm. So all he was a vehicle to bring up what was there. Mm-hmm. Well, that's an archetype for addiction. That's what the primary addict does.
Right.
He gains people to enable the shit out of him. And if you don't enable him properly, he gets rid of you and replaces you with somebody else.
Or punishes you. If you're in the family system, you can't get out.
Well, when Randy was explaining, I finally asked him, what does that mean, this thing that Paul Perry teaches about? What is it called?
Bruce Perry.
Yeah, Bruce Perry.
Oh, the neurosequential model?
Exactly. I finally asked him yesterday, what was that? Or actually, when he came and spent the night. And he explained it to me. So the bottom line is, all these people in prison and all these people that they're crapping all over, they're scapegoats.
Oh, yeah.
You know? I mean, you know that.
Yeah.
But I didn't. You know? And so, I mean, this is about as normal as it can get.
Yeah. That's a whole, if you want to know more about that, listen to the Bruce Perry episode. But talking about not just the environmental racism, but the environmental inequalities socioeconomically, which also happens to usually correspond with race, and also educationally, and what happens in a society with less equity. And what I mean by that is social equity. So there's a whole book, there's multiple books on this, if you want to go economic theory, about countries that have less of a gap between the rich and the poor, have less of these social problems that we find ourselves in here. And the book that I'm thinking of is written by Thomas Pickety, and he's written several books. He's an economist, a French economist, about wealth inequality and what that does to a society socioeconomically. So you layer racial discrimination and on top of, or an anti-women, a patriarchal view of things on top of that, and socioeconomically, that is a lot of stuff that people are born into that soup. They don't even know it. And then with the Bruce Perry model, neurosequentially, if you're always in fight, flight, freeze survival mode, you do what everybody else is doing in your neighborhood.
Right.
And if you're in a neighborhood where everybody's dad is an architect, well, that's your survival mode. I need to become an architect. I need to become a doctor. I need to become a lawyer. But if you're in a neighborhood where everybody's just trying to survive and get by, and some of the people are selling drugs, and some of the people are just having day labor jobs, well, you're going to do that. And how do I relax? Alcohol. Well, what do I do for fun? Fight. Have sex with people before you know them. And,
Right.
And it perpetuates a system where instead of giving people, a kid in a school gets identified early, they get identified early. We don't know how to, the people who are in education often don't know how to read when a kid's in a traumatic situation unless they're being beaten. If they're being beaten or sexually abused, yes, we know how to do that now because in the last 20 years that's really changed. But let's just say they're mouthy and they're disrespectful to the teacher, or they're a bit of a bully. We penalize them.
Right.
We say, you are being bad. Don't be a bad bully. Don't be disrespectful. Well, where did they pick that up?
Exactly.
They picked that up in their neighborhood. They picked it up from their home. They picked it up out of pain. So instead of doing that, we still punish these people and think it's going to change them. It's not going to change them. Right. It's just going to make them double down on their identity that I'm a bad boy. I'm a bad girl. Yeah. And then what do I do?
And they're not telling them anything they don't know.
Well, right. And then they become friends with all the police. So they become friends with the hospital workers. They're the frequent flyers in the hospital, and the police know them. And then eventually, if they don't get help because we've isolated them, we've said, you're out of the main classroom. You can't be dealt with. You're in the special school now. You're in the alternative school now. Probation, parole, you're bad. They don't get the help they need. They get into the behavioral health system. Half the time the therapists don't know trauma-informed therapy, so they say, what the hell is wrong with this person? Why do they keep acting out? The next thing you know, they're in jail. Then we got private prisons. Now we're capitalizing off that. Now people own stock in private prisons. They elect people that... I mean, this is the system we're in. It's sick. Yeah. It's so sick. And how do we fix it? Well, we got to start with us. I can't go run for politics.
It's really unfortunate to quote Michael Jackson, but you got to change the man in the mirror.
Right. The man in the mirror.
But there's another aspect of that, the man in the mirror, of the racism, not only between races, but the racism in the same race.
Oh, sure.
That's me, and I'm considered a coconut.
What's that?
I'm brown on the outside, but white on the inside.
Oh, I've never
I
heard of that.
I'm not fluent in Spanish.
Okay.
I'm not a good Mexican. I'm not a good Native American. I'm not a good alcoholic. And I wasn't very good at this shit, man. I went into treatment. I heard people tell stories and I go, fuck.
Right.
But then they would say, well, did you drink a lot? I said, well, I didn't think so. Well, how much? And I tell them, they go, holy shit, really? Is that a lot? I didn't know,
Right.
But no, this is great.
Yeah.
This is great.
And so, Dr. Bruce Perry's work is what David and I are referencing. Check it out. Fantastic stuff. It's on YouTube. He's got his own Child Trauma Academy. And I think the paradigm shift is coming, which is understanding us as humans instead of with the context of what culture you grew up in, with the context of religion or no religion, with the context of the cultural baggage, with the context of your adverse childhood experiences, but understanding that the difference is what happened to your nervous system versus what happened to my nervous system. And instead of what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. What happened to you? Tell us your story. Right. And that's the paradigm that's got to shift, not only in medicine, where it's shifting right now. It's been shifting in the therapy world for the last 15, 20, 30 years now. It's been shifting. It's got to shift in the world of medicine. It's got to start shifting in the world of education. And I don't know how to shift it in the business world. You tell me. I have no idea. But shifting in our friend groups, too, in our social interactions.
Absolutely.
Instead of going, well, boy, Roy is really fucked up. Well, what happened to Roy? Why is he acting fucked up?
Right.
Roy, why are you gambling every weekend? Why are you spending all this money at the casino? Why are you drinking so much? Yeah. Instead of, boy, you drink so much, you son of a bitch. Why are you gambling all our money away, you fucker?
Yep.
We ask the question. And yeah, maybe Roy's got, I don't know, I'm picking on Roy. There's a Roy out there. He's got walls built up. He's got resistance. And does Roy have responsibilities to work on himself? Well, hell yes. But don't reinforce the negative identity. Right. Don't reinforce it. Let him deal with that.
It's reinforcing what they already believe about themselves.
And that's the tragedy of the kids right now.
That's the problem.
That's the tragedy of the kids I worked with in Maryville, which is a very difficult neighborhood in Phoenix.
Yeah. When
I worked with them, they were already convinced at 14 years old that the only thing they could ever do in life is become a gang member and sell drugs.
Yeah. Which is what? It's creating a family of choice.
Well, yeah.
That's their support system.
That was their support. And that's what all their friends did. And that's what they thought. They thought, I'll never be good in school. I can't read well. I can't do math well. What's my choices? I can go work at Walmart and Home Depot for nothing, or I can sell drugs and have a sweet car.
Right.
I mean, that's survival.
Think so?
Now you can say, well, how dare they didn't think about how that's affecting the community. What 14-year-old thinks about how they're affecting the fucking community?
Well, there's a part in there where I don't think there was a time when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old that I said, you know what? When I'm 12, I'm going to start drinking. Right. And I'm going to drink to excess. And I think I'll start doing drugs. Okay. And then I think I'll be in bad relations. I didn't fucking plan that.
Right.
That wasn't my intent. My intent was, Susan and I don't watch regular television. We watch old TV shows.
Right.
Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best, all that kind of shit. Right. And you look at it now and go, what the fuck were they marketing there?
Right.
But it's just incredible. I want to believe that I'm an old hippie and I'm actually changing the world. I'm changing the vibration in the world because I'm changing myself.
Well, and I would say this, I think you are, because, there's certain people in the community that you hear about. And then there's certain people in our community that you hear about because they are in some sort of, magazine, some sort of, the Valleys of Phoenix's Hot Millionaires catalog. But then you hear about people like you, and you just hear about you. I mean, I've heard about you like a dozen times in the last 10 years before I met you, because my life was going in all sorts of directions. And I remember this reminds me of my friend Marco, who died in 2012, I think. Mm-hmm. And he was a former heroin addict. And he was a heroin addict for a long, long time. And then he had a bunch of kids, and he I think he was probably 35, began to make rock music with whoever would play rock music with him. And he'd go around and he'd play rock music and he'd take care of everybody. And everybody in the bar, he'd say, you know what? You don't need that alcohol. He'd say that. He'd say, so if you ever want to quit, you call me. Mm-hmm. And he was everybody. He was the opposite. He was a bit codependent. He was everybody's sponsor, right?
Right.
Anybody wanted to quit alcohol, they call Marco. He's clean off heroin. He doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do anything. And he lived in a shack. He didn't have money. He didn't have anything. And I remember, but if you went around the music community, everybody knew him. Yep. And they said, you know what? He helped me quit drinking. He helped me this, helped me that. And he got cancer, unfortunately, eventually. But I went to his funeral, and it was so big they couldn't even have it at a church or a funeral home. They had to have it in this giant park over in Tempe. Wow. And the place was full. Yeah. And he was only, God, when he died, he must have only been 48, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing him the night before he died, and he was intubated, unfortunately. So he was writing us notes. And, he just said, we were like, I don't know. He just said to me, he said, you just got to keep talking to people. Mm-hmm. You just got to keep getting out there and telling people that their lives are worth it. Mm-hmm. That's what he said to me. Oh, he wrote it, Mm-hmm. And then he died the next day. And I remember at his funeral, everyone's crying, and somebody got up there and they just said, you know what? You all have a chance to be Marco now. Yep. You all have a chance to go out there, and not by being a special healer. Marco lived in a shack, had a van, had some guitars, worked some menial janitorial job for at ASU or something, mm-hmm. For his day job. He wasn't no millionaire, but he's the most wealthy person any of us have ever known. Because if you're around him, you could feel the change. Right. He didn't preach. Right. You could feel the change. He'd say, if you ever want to quit, let me know. I'm a recovering addict. That's all he'd say. Yep. Next, people say, next thing you know, 2 months later, people are calling him, texting his phone. Yeah. I want to quit.
Well, when I did my daughter's thing, I ended with that. Yeah. I didn't have to glorify her because she did it way before she left. And we wanted to do something special here, Amy had the ability to have a minimal ego, okay? Possibly because of her disabilities. And so she affected a lot of people. And she did it naturally. Obviously, she didn't go to school for it. She just did it naturally. And I wanted to put balloons. No, the balloons are bad for the economy and bad for the planes and all that kind of. You can't do butterflies because they're all going to frickin' die. You put doves in the air and they're going to crap all over. I said this in my daughter's thing. Right. I said, Amy was a natural born healer with minimal or no ego. So I said, the last thing I said is, now you be Amy. You be Amy, and change the world by being a lovely person. That's what she did. I mean, at least she did that for me. And I know she did that for other people. Yeah. And, that's what this friend of yours did. Yeah. And that's what you and I are doing right now.
Yeah, it's a ripple. And that's what I would say to anybody listening is that's who you can be. Right. It doesn't take education. It does take some self-work, but it just really comes down to trying. There's no special certification you need to be a nice person.
No. We're all creators. And so what do we choose to create? The same things that cause us discomfort and pain and misery and an inefficient way of using energy? Or are we going to co-create healing? Which at some point after the dark side, on the other side of that, is the peace and calm, is the recognition that I don't have to do or be anything to be loved by myself or to myself. I can't believe I'm fucking saying that. Yeah. Because I didn't believe that for a long, long time. But I'm changing what I believe.
Yeah. And then one of the other takeaways I'm going to get is you can believe whatever you want, but one of the keys to flexibility is to be open to changing those beliefs and understand you're going to go through different seasons. Like a deciduous tree drops its leaves. It goes into hibernation, even in Arizona, mm-hmm. And then it grows, and then it flowers, and it, tries to propagate, and then leaves fall off again, hibernation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the important part. And one thing I want to say is you said you're 68, and I think one of the biggest things I like to preach against is people, when they retire, withdrawing from society mm-hmm. and not engaging with younger folks or something worthwhile.
Right.
So, I mean, I've met a number of people in their 60s who are just inspiring, and they may not be out there every day, 8 hours a day doing what they used to because they're retired or partly retired or whatever, but you said you want to use your energy efficiently. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so important for people who are older, and I hope I do this, to balance it with, what you've learned is really still damn important. Everybody is going through what you already went through in some ways mm-hmm. with their ego and with their self-understanding and with their balancing or attempting to balance. And so you've got things that are important to say. And that's the thing I think, one of the biggest things I think mainstream American culture misses is that those voices of the elders who want to plant trees that they may not enjoy sitting under mm-hmm. someday. Mm-hmm. But planting a tree isn't just planting a tree. It's also, the metaphor, of course, is giving hope to people. And what you said is that you don't need to heal those people. You don't need to change those people. You just need to interact with them. You just need to see if they're open to it. And so I think that's another big takeaway for me.
Yeah. Well, I told you I've had an affinity for mesquite.
Yeah.
So when I would go hunting or go whatever with these guys, and you'd see a tree that got hit by lightning or a river washed it down and it killed it, and an entire different tree came up, with that. And then at one point I found a stick that I was going to make a staff for. Actually, I was going to make it for somebody else. And as I was scraping the bark off of it, half of the branch was alive and the other half was dead. And so the part that was dead had been eaten by bugs, and it was all flawed. And as I was talking to a friend of mine about that staff, as I was scraping the bark off to expose what was in there, and thorns and the bark will scratch you if you're up against it. It's a hardy, very defensive plant, And I got into these parts that were damaged, and also my dad's voice came up and said, "Well, it's broken. It's fucked up. It's no good. So it's firewood, And then I was looking at my friend and I said, "But look at the beautiful patina of the maroon colored stripes in there, of this voided area." And all of a sudden I realized, even though the exterior looked like it was live, underneath it was damaged. And when we could scrape that damaged area off, we exposed the beauty that's inside. And all of a sudden I said, "This was fucking 20 years ago." And I said, "Holy shit, I'm just out describing my recovery."
Wow.
With this damn stick. I never gave it to the guy.
That's amazing.
It's still sitting in the room.
Yeah. I love that when nature gives us those clues. Wow. Well, that's very powerful. David, I'm really glad we got to talk today, and I know this is basically going to be a two-parter podcast. I know you've said a lot of things I think people need to hear, but what's on your mind right now if you would just tell a random listener who's listening to this in Australia or Seattle or Pensacola, just somebody who just happens to listen, what's something you want to say?
Perhaps the identity that we have created in order to survive is not the identity that's going to set us free.
The identity that we've created to survive perhaps is not the identity that can set us free.
So it's to consider the possibility of redefining our identity, thus redefining the emotional attachment to that identity.
I like it.
Good.
I like it.
Because I didn't know I was going to say that.
Well, there you go.
Most of the shit I say, I don't know I'm going to say. That's why I like it when people ask me questions, because my sister, and we're off of this thing right now.
Oh.
Are we?
Well, you can tell. Is this appropriate for the radio? We can keep going.
Well, my sister asked me one time. We're 5 years apart, so we know at least they had sex 5 times.
Right.
My parents. Why are we so different? Wow. Where our parents were in their relationship when we came here, the roles that we individually played in the family system, the ways that we learned how to survive, and the way that we self-identified, and our unique personalities. That's why we're different, and we came from the same people.
Wow.
When I just told this to Randy the other day, the 4 of us didn't talk that much about anything except crap, and we ripped each other apart with sarcasm. But at one point, they told me that when I was born, they were a lot less violent and a lot less of what they were. And my response to that is, holy shit, what did you guys go through?
Wow.
Because what I experienced, I can't imagine it was worse, but it was. And they learned how to deal with it differently. They learned different ways to survive. They became scapegoats, they became heroes, they became lost children, they became all the different roles that were needed to play the system.
The faux parent, I think, of one of them. Is it that like the...
And there was another part of this where you talked about everybody has multiple personalities. It's just when it becomes a disorder.
It's what, what we all have. I always say this. We all have different personality parts based on time, based on things that happen to us, based on impactful events that they all and they often disagree with each other. The issue is that most people are co-conscious, meaning that when these different personality or parts or emotional pieces raise their head, they know what's happening. They can't stop it, but they know what's happening. When somebody has dissociative identity disorder, what happens is they actually don't know that they've been hijacked, and they go around actually usually calling themselves a different name, and then we really are like, whoa, that's a disorder. But everybody's got different, modes of behaving, and a lot of that can be influenced by your environment. Yeah. So, like you said, you were avoiding partying because there's a part of you that doesn't want to party back then, and there's a part of you that knew it was wrong and for all these different reasons, but there was still a part of you that if you got around it, it was not good. It was dangerous because it could have flipped that old switch right there. And,
exactly.
And I see that, that's why I'm doing a lecture on environmental trauma and socioeconomic and racial trauma and just trauma in April. And I'm trying to how do we illustrate that? How the environment is so strong in shaping our thought patterns as children. And adults too. We have a lot more pride about, it was my choice. I did this. Oh, did you? Right? Well, marketing proves otherwise and sales prove otherwise. In America, we buy things based on emotions. Yeah. We don't buy them based on logic.
Hey, what happened after 911?
Right.
They said, go shopping.
Oh, yeah.
Go buy shit.
Oh my God, they did. This is funny. Last thing I'll say, I'm throwing a shout out. There's this guy, and he's in New York. Actually, he started after 9/11. His little theater troupe. He's called Reverend Billy and the Church of Stop Shopping. And this guy is hilarious. He dresses up like a full preacher outfit, and he says, instead of hallelujah, he says earth-alleluia. and he's an environmental activist, and he goes around preaching, and one of his biggest stunts was in the Mall of America doing all these songs and dances, and they thought he was from an actual religious church. And he does have a church. It's a 501c3, but it's a charity, right? It's a church of Stop Shopping. And they sang all these songs in the Mall of America in Minneapolis, which is the largest mall in the United States, and it was this whole thing. And now he's been arrested so many times just for protesting and mostly singing songs and doing theater. But I have to throw a shout out to Reverend Billy, because I think he's just a phenomenal guy, and he's fun to follow on the internet. You can watch his videos on the internet. So. Well,
I think as you say that, I think most of us that are going to play a part in changing the world, we're all freaking weird.
Yeah, and I think the rest of the people that are going to change the world once they get out of their thing, they want to be weird.
Yeah,
they want to be different, but they're stuck in some sort of role. They're stuck in some sort of cultural programming. It's just wild. I do job interviews sometimes for therapists, and the different and these are all people that have their master's degrees and their bachelor's degrees, right? And you do these interviews, and it's like I'm starting to tell the difference between people that know the books and the people that have done their own work,
sure,
and maybe remember the books.
Yeah,
there's a big difference.
Absolutely,
and the difference is palpable because the clients and the patients can feel the difference.
Yeah,
and if I can feel the difference, they can feel the difference. And any day of the week, I'd rather have a less skilled person with a better attitude and energy about them than a more skilled person with a negative or a pompous sort of got their master's degree to make themselves feel better, personality. So anyway, that's what I'll say.
Nobody will threaten me of that. They literally gave me a diploma to get me the hell out of the school. Okay. And I have no formal education except practical. That's it.
Well, education, that's a whole nother topic. But that's also culturally formulated. Anyway.
Yeah. This is great, man.
Yeah, I've had a great time, so.
Good.
And there you have it. That has been part 2 of my conversation with David Fraijo. We discussed a lot in this podcast, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. Of course, I'm going to have David's links to his book and his current work in the show notes. And as David said, the world is going to need a lot of healers, and if we wait for everybody to get papers, we're in trouble. Of course, that is a paraphrase. If you did not hear part 1 of our conversation, I highly recommend going back to Intentional Clinician episode 83 and listening to part 1 of my conversation with David Fraijo. If you believe you are in need of counseling, do not hesitate to make an appointment with a local counselor in your area. If you can't afford it, try a support group or group therapy. You can make an appointment with the excellent clinicians in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area at Health for Life Grand Rapids Counseling and the Trauma Informed Counseling Center of Grand Rapids by visiting www.healthforlifegr.com. That's Health for Life Counseling Grand Rapids. Also, if you are in the state of Michigan, you can see those clinicians over telehealth. The recording you just listened to consists of the personal opinions of Paul Krauss and his guest. And while these are based upon literature they have read and their experience in their lives and in the field, these opinions should not be viewed as the definitive opinion on any subject. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for treatment. If you are in a crisis, please dial 911 right now or the National Suicide Prevention Line at 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. Are you a young person of color feeling down, stressed out, or overwhelmed? Text the word STEVE, that's STEVE, to 741-741. The number is 741-741, and a live, trained crisis counselor will respond via text. Did you know that you can support your local bookstore by shopping online at bookshop.org? That's bookshop.org. You can order books from the comfort of your own home while supporting local brick-and-mortar businesses near you, such as independent bookstores, which is really a great source of culture and community. If you are a therapist and you are not a member of your professional organization, I urge you to get involved. For instance, the Michigan Mental Health Counselors Association in Michigan and the Arizona Counselors Association in Arizona, and many more, as this helps increase the availability of quality mental health services around the state, increasing education, promoting best practices, and working to keep licensed professional counselors and other professionals accessible by the public. If you are a therapist and have not been trained in EMDR therapy, check out EMDR Training Solutions and register for an upcoming training today. You can use the code INTENTIONAL at checkout and get $100 off your first training. Take it from me, these are excellent trainers, some of the best in the business, and I've known them for a long time. Thank you so much for listening to The Intentional Clinician. I'm wishing you all a safe and peaceful week.